Okay, once again, hello everyone, and trust we are doing great. So, I'll just start with what SQL is. The last class, what we did was just to, what's the word? Well, just to sort of like look at how we can install the MySQL, and today we'll just start with, intro to SQL and some other concepts like that. So, I mean, okay, so the question is, what is SQL, right? And then you want to pronounce it as SQL, or you want to pronounce it as SQL. So SQL actually stands for Structured Query Language, right? And it is the internal language for relational database management, right? So if you're trying to interact with your database, right, you get to write something called SQL, right, which is like a query. So a language that is called a structured query language, right? So SQL is not a programming language, right? It's a database language. Like it actually allows you to communicate with the database. It's not a programming language because you are not building programs. You know, when you write either Python or use any other language, either you are building a program and you're trying to create something, yeah. But with SQL is different. You're not creating any program. Rather, you're trying to retrieve information from your database and trying to carry out other database operations, right? Not necessarily programs or things that are necessarily built by writing programs and all that, right? So relational database, like I said, so there's a reason why it is called relational. It's called relational because data is stored in tables, and these different tables are related. For example, a company has different Excel files, right? They have an Excel file containing customers. They have another Excel file containing the products, and they also have another Excel file containing the orders made by the customers, right? So which means that you have like three different Excel files. Now, if you look at an Excel file, you can see an Excel file is made up of rows and columns, right? So the moment you talk about rows and columns, it means you're actually referring to a table. Right? You know, it's always a table where you have your different rows and you also have your different columns. Right? Like I said, so the reason why it's called relational is because you have tables, different tables, right? And these tables are related to each other, which is why it's called relational database, right? So what are those key things to look out for? Organized tables, like I rightly said, tables define relationship, which means that the different tables that you have in your database. So just see database as a container that actually contains different tables, right? Different tables that are related to each other. So you can see first of all, you actually have organized tables, right? You have table for customer, you have table for products, you have table for others, right? And there's a relationship between these different tables, right? Another thing too is to also ensure that the data remains consistent, right? Because if you are retrieving information on customers, you also want to ensure that the data is consistent, it's actually reliable over a long period of time. And you just notice that from banking systems or some e-commerce platforms make use of SQL, right? They make use of SQL. So what are the core SQL operations, right? What are the core SQL operations? So you have CRUD. So CRUD means create, read, update, and delete. That's create, read, update, and delete. Yeah. So when you say create, you're trying to create something. You know, the first thing you want to do is before, if for example now you want to create a database, right? You want to have a database actually. So instead of having the different Excel files, you want a container that contains these Excel files, right? So which means that see that container as a database. So what you're going to do is first off create a database. They create three tables. So the first table will be for customers, the second table will be for products, and the third table will be for others, right? So you can see first thing is created database, and you also created the different tables that would be in the database, right? And retrieve, like you are trying to query information. For example, I could say, oh, I want to see all the rows from the customers table, or I want to see all the rows from the product table, or I want to see all the rows from the other table, right? So when you're trying to retrieve information, right, you, like I said, you also get to just write query to be able to do that, right? And just in case you want to delete records, right? So when you hear the word record, now, like I said, a table has rows and it has columns, right? It has rows and columns, right? Now, each of those rows, we call it a record. Let me still lay emphasis on the example I gave. let's assume you have a table that contains 10 customers, for example. Now, it means the first row contains information about the first customer, right? The second row contains information about the second customer. So what it means is it means that we have different records of different customers. So it means a row, either you want to call it a row or you call it a record, right? Because it's simply a record, right? Then for column, you can either call it fields or you can call it attributes, right? So these are just the core SQL operations, right? Crawl would mean create, read, update, delete. You're trying to create something, or you're trying to read something, or you're trying to update something. So I think before now, I actually gave the example of SQL is mostly used in banks. For example, the banks actually have details about their customers, and the customer comes and say, I want to just change date of birth. I want to change my date of birth, right? So you can see initially you already have a database that already contains their different customers, but they want to make an update to a particular record, right? For a particular customer, right? So what it means is they have to what carry out the updates operations, right? And just in case you want to like delete, perhaps they feel like, oh, some of the records that are in a table, right, are not supposed to be there. You want to delete, so which is where the delete comes into play. So what are those basic things, right? I think I mentioned table, I mentioned row, I mentioned column. Now there's something called primary key, right? Now, like I said, the table will mean a collection of related data, right? Organized in rows and columns. So it means once you have your data in a structured format. Now the reason why it's called structured data is because you have your data in rows and columns. At the moment you mention rows and columns, it means you're referring to a table, right? Because in a table you have your rows and you also have your columns, right? Like I said, a row, I think I actually give that example. A row will mean that is single record, right? A column would mean a field or an attribute. Still giving that example on the bank actually has table containing different costs, right? So it could be that the different columns in the table, there could be like a column for name, a column for age, a column for other personal information. So that name itself, either you want to call it a field or you can call it an attribute, right? Now there's something called primary key. Primary key will mean that a column that uniquely identifies each row. So take for example, um, still building on that example customer, right? Now the customer names cannot be used as a primary key. The question is why? Because, for example, my name could be Victor Bolade. Another customer could also be a Victor Bolade. Now, if you see Victor Bolade in the database, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's still the same person. Right? You could have 4, 5 persons, then Victor Bolade, right? So what it means, there has to be a column that uniquely identifies each record. So it could be that maybe, for example, the first customers could be 3_0, or let me say 1, for example. So it means 1 indicates first customer, 2 indicates second customer, 3 indicates third customer, 4 indicates 5 customers, right? So those numbers, right? Those numbers will call that the primary key. Why? Because it helps us to identify each record uniquely. So I know that, oh, number 1 is the first customer, number 2, second customer, number 3, third customer, number 4, fourth customer, right? So like I said, primary key will mean column, right? Or you can say a field that actually uniquely identifies each record in a table, right? And when you talk about foreign key, right? What do you mean by a foreign key, right? What do you mean about foreign key? Yeah. So still building on that example that I actually give customers, orders, and products, right? Now, for example, the customer table will contain information about the different customers in the company, right? The order table will contain information about different orders carried out by different customers, right? Now, the product will also contain information about products, right, being purchased by the customers or product the company offers. And let me just use as product the company offers. Yeah. So, like I said, you actually have 3 tables. You have customer table, you have the what's the word? You have the orders table, you also have the product table, right? Let me just open this doc file just so that I don't know if it's open. Okay, yes, it is. So that I can easily explain what I'm trying to say. Right. Now look at this. right? I believe everyone can see my screen. Like I said, we actually have 3 tables, right? We have customer table, we have product table, and we have others table. Now, you will notice that for the customer table, for example, you have customer ID, you have product ID, you have other ID, right? Now, for this, you have product ID and you have products. Here, you have other ID and you have others. Now, if you look at this, let me take it. If you look at this, you can see that in this case, I know that for this particular stuff, the primary key here is going to be customer ID. Why? So then once you see customer ID, means each customer will have a unique identifier, right? Now, if you look at the next table, products ID, right? You also notice that this product ID is the primary key. Yeah. Now, here's my question. Now, other ID. So if you are looking at this table, which of these columns would you see is going to be the primary key? You can drop your answers in the chat. For this other table, let me highlight it. For this other table, between other underscore ID and others, which of these columns would you say is the primary key? From what I have explained, I said for this particular, so you can see customer table, customer ID, primary key, right? Products table, product ID. Product ID is what primary key, right? Now you have the others table and you have other ID. So my question is, between other ID and others, which of the column would you say is the primary key for that table? Please drop your response in the chat, right? So thank you very much. So the answer is going to be what? Other ID, right? Because if you look at it, these uniquely identify each other. Other underscore identify. So it means it uniquely identifies what? Each other. Now, looking at this, you could see that it's like Victor. I noticed that here we have product ID. We can also see the product ID. Here we have other ID. We can also see the other ID here. So what is going on, right? Now let me explain. Now, if you look at this, the question is, can you see any relationship between these tables? Yes or no? The answer is yes. How? Now, if I look at this, for example, I have the customers table and the products table. There's a relationship. Why? Because how do I know this relationship? You can see in this case, I know that it's product ID, and this is known, they know that it's what? Product ID. Now, so it means that if, for example, now I have information about the product ID, yeah, and I want to know which product is this product ID. What is the product for this particular product ID? So it means all I need to do is to come to the products table and search. Oh, let's say product ID. Let me say it's 1, for example. Let me say product underscore 1. So it means I have to come to the product table and see, oh, which one is product underscore 1? Oh, it means the product is beverage. Or let me say clothes, for example. Right? So it means, oh, so you can see that for these 2 tables, what connects them together is this column. So this product ID here, this product ID here, connect tables together. So it means what you can find here, you can also find it in this what product table, right? So you can see there's a relationship, right? So if you also look at customers table and others table, is there a relationship? You can see you have other ID, you also have other ID. So here's my question. Between customers table and others table, is there a relationship? Because customer ID, you can see you have customer ID there, you have product ID, you also have other ID. For the others table, let me try to reduce this so that you can see it clearly. So you can see the tables clear. I think this is better. Now I'm comparing customers table and others table, right? Now the customers table and others table, do you think there's a relationship between these 2 tables? Because I can see other ID here. I can also see other ID here. So my question is, do you think there's a relationship between this customers table and this others table? Yes or no? Just put your answers in the chat. So let me just check the chat. Between customers table, yes. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, there's a relationship because you can see you have other idea, you also have other idea, right? Now, you can see before we came here, I was talking about foreign key. Now, if you look at this, based on this, I noticed that for this product table, the primary key here is product ID, right? For this others table, the primary key is others table. So now, what it means is, if I'm going to give it a name here, I know that this case, customer ID is the primary key. Now, in this case, because I already have this product ID, it already exists in a table, or it's the primary key of another table. So it means in this case, I'm going to call it a foreign. Let me explain what I'm trying to say. In this case, product table, what is the primary key? Product ID, right? In this case, others table, what is the primary key? Others ID, right? Now, in this particular table, Now, will you call product ID as a primary key or will you call it as a foreign key? Now, we cannot call it a primary key. Why? Because it is in the customer table. So the primary key for the customer table is customer ID. So it means that this product ID, because product ID is a primary key in another table, therefore it is what? It is a foreign key here. And it's also a foreign key here, right? So it means product ID and other underscore ID, they are what? They are both what? Foreign key, right? Now, let me just give you a very practical example. Now, imagine me as a Nigerian. I know in my country, in Nigeria, if you say, oh, what's your nationality? I'll say, oh, I'm a Nigerian, right? But the moment I get outside Nigeria, I am a foreigner, right? So this kind of see, you have product table, you have other table. Now, each of them have their own primary key. For this primary key, you can actually find them in another table. So because they are in another table, that makes them what? A foreign key. So if the question is asked that in this case, product ID here, is it a primary key here or is it a foreign key here? It is a foreign key. Why? Because it is a primary key in another table. So what it means is the moment you have a column that is a primary key in a table, and you can find that column in another table, it becomes a foreign key in that table, which is why I gave the illustration of I'm a Nigerian and I find myself in another country because I'm not a citizen of that country. I'm a foreigner. So it means that in this case, product ID and another ID, they are both primary key in their respective table. But because we can find them in the customer's table, so it means the two of them, we call them what? Foreign key, right? Foreign keys, rather, because plural, right? So it means that product ID is a foreign key, other ID is a foreign key, right? Let me just stop here to see if anybody has any question regarding the explanation. I want to be sure that the explanation about primary key and foreign key is clear. Please, if it's not clear, just let me know so that I can explain it again, please. So the explanation about primary key and foreign key, if it is clear, just drop one in the chat so that I can continue. If it is clear, please just drop one in the chat so that I can continue. If it is clear, please drop one in the chat so that I can continue. So yes, it is clear, right? So we can continue. Now let me go back to our slides, right? So I'm going to explain what's the primary key and all that is. Now, here's the thing. Now, we know that, like I said, SQL is not a programming language. We already established that, right? Now, the thing is, for SQL, there are actually different categories, right? Now, for example, in Nigeria, you say, oh, everyone is in Nigerian, but the official language is English, right? But we have different tribes. We have the Yorubas, we have the Igbos, we have the Hausas, and they speak different language, right? So what it means is, for SQL languages, you have DDL, you have DML, and you have DQL. So just before I continue, Rita, I think you raised your hands. Please, you have a question, please. Go ahead, please.
Yes, sorry, I think my screen froze for a bit. The explanation for that foreign key and the primary key, please can you take it again?
Oh, okay, no problem. Let me go back to that, please. Right. Okay, so I said that we have three tables. I just decided to give an illustration of three tables. We have customers table, we have products table, and we have others table, right? Now, if I look at this, and I'm being asked, what is the primary key? First, the primary key is a column that uniquely identifies each row. Now you want to say each row, I want to say each record. So if I look at this, for this table, I have customer ID, which means customer ID, right? So it means it could be that the first customer would be number 1, right? The second customer would be number 2. The third customer would be number 3, and so on. So it means in this case, customer ID is the unique identifier, customer ID. You can see. In this case, what is the primary key? Product ID. In this case, what is the primary key? Order ID. Why? Because it's going to uniquely identify each row, right? You can see in this case, product ID is going to be primary key. In this case, order ID is also going to be the primary key, right? Why? Because like I said, primary key uniquely identifies each row. So the question is, can you have a duplicate value in your in the column that is primary key? The answer is no. So when you say something is unique, it means you can never have duplicate. It's just going to be one value. 1, this is the first customer. 2, represent the second customer. 3, represent the third customer. So it could be that, I don't know, sometimes you could see something like this. course underscore maybe 0001, for example, right? Course underscore 002, for example, right? You can see this is what primary. So it means first customer is 001, second customer 0002, like that, right? So it means customer ID is the unique identifier in this store. So because of that, that makes it what the primary key. In this case, the product table, product ID is the unique, right? The unique identifier. So which means that this product ID is the primary key here, right? In this case too, order ID is also what the primary key. Now, but we notice something, right? For the customer table, I can see product ID and I can see order ID. But I notice that this product ID is the primary key in the product table. Order ID is the primary key in the order table. Now, what that means is because I can find this, because product ID is primary key here, order ID is also a primary key here. So it means product ID is a foreign key in this customer table. So I give an illustration. I say, for example, I'm in Nigeria and I move to another country. I'm a foreigner, right? I'm not citizen of that country. So let's come back to SQL. So what it means is, now in this case, I already know product ID is the primary key here. Order ID is the primary key here. But you see these two identifiers, you can actually find it in the customer table. So because first question I'm going to ask myself, what is the primary key here? Customer ID. So the question is, what will you now call the product ID and the order ID? Now these two will be called foreign key. So it means product ID is a foreign key, order ID is a foreign key. Why? This is a foreign key because you can find this column, because this column is a primary key in another table. This order ID is also a foreign key. Why? Because it is what? The primary key in another table. So what it means is, if you have a column, sorry? Okay, so what that means is if you have a column or a field that is a primary key in a table, and you can find that same field in another table, it becomes a foreign key in that table. I don't know if this explanation is clear, Rita.
Yes, it is. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. So SQL languages, right? You have DDL, you have DML, you have DQL. Now, when you see DDL will mean data definition language. So what that would mean is, this is what you use to create, to modify, or to delete something, right? So after this slide, you see like the different keywords for this. So the DDL is used to define. So it means if I want to create a database, for example, which language am I going to use? The data definition language. If I want to create a table, right, which language am I going to use? The data definition language. Right? Because it's used to define, it's used to modify. It's also used to what? Update what your database was structured, right? Which is why we call it DDL. Like I said, after this slide, you see the different keywords for each of the language. Now you have DML, you also have DQL. DML would mean this is what you use to, when you say manipulation, it means this is what you use to manage data within a database. Now, data query language, this is what you use to retrieve data from the database. Right now, let me move to the next slide so that I can easily elaborate on each of these. Okay, so I said DDL means data definition language. Now, if you remember, I said you can use to define, modify, or delete. So it means define means if I'm trying to create a database, or if I'm trying to create a table. So the question is, which language will I use? Will I use DDL? Will I use DML? Will I use DQL? So the answer is I'm going to use DDL. Why? Because DDL is used to define, modify, or delete. It means I'm trying to define, if I'm trying to create a database, I have to use what is DDL. Like I said, so you have create, you have author, you have drop, you have truncate. So from the word create, you are creating a database, right? You are creating a new table, right? So that's great. Now, author, when you hear the word author, it means like you're trying to make adjustments. Like you already have an existing table. Now you're trying to, either you want to remove a column, you want to make an update. Either you want to remove a column or you want to add a column, which is why we said author, right? Now, when you say drop, from the word drop, it means you are trying to permanently delete, either you want to delete an entire table or you want to delete a database, right? Now, truncate also does the same. Now, there's a difference between drop and truncate. Now, when you say drop, you can see what it means. It deletes everything, including the structure. You will not see. So if, for example, now I have a table, right? I have a table. Good. Maybe I should go back to this so you get what I'm trying to say. Now, you know how you have this table, right? if I click on this, and I press delete, what happens? It deletes everything, right? Now, but if I come here and use backspace, you can see I can edit, I can remove the column names, but I'm not deleting the entire table. This is what I'm trying to see. Let me go back to the slide so you get what I'm trying to see. So when you say delete would mean you're deleting everything, the entire tables, the database. Now, if I'm to use truncate, let me explain what truncate does, right? Now, delete would delete everything. Let me just delete this. So delete, you can see that's delete, right? Now, when you say truncate, let me explain truncate. So truncate would mean we are removing every single thing. For example, let me say this. Let me explain something. So let's say I have one. Yeah, I'm just giving an example. 001. Let me see pro 001. Then order, right? Order 001, for example, right? Now, if I use delete will remove all this entire stuff. If I use truncate, it will only just remove the rows, right? You can see it's not deleting the entire. So all the rows that are there in the table, it will delete everything, right? So you can see delete removes everything entirely. You will not even see the table there at all, right? While you can see for truncate, removes all the rows from the table. It will just empty the table, but it will not delete everything. Delete, it deletes the entire table, right? Truncate to remove all the rows from the table. Yes, to just empty the table, right? So just thereby preventing the table's structure, right? So this is like the DDL, right? Okay, so let me move to the next one, right? Let me make this full screen. Okay, now we have the DML and you have the DQL, right? So you might say, oh, all of these things are just theoretical. The moment you start, when we start writing our queries, right, you get to understand it better. Oh, this is how to create a database. Oh, this is how to drop a database. Oh, this is how to alter, right? Something like that, right? So now moving on to the next, so you have data manipulation language, you have data query language. Data manipulation, you're trying to insert, maybe I want to insert new records, right? I want to add, so if I say I want to add new rows, it means I'm trying to add new records, right? Either I say I'm trying to add new records, or I say I'm trying to add new rows, right? And that will mean they try to modify existing data in a row. So for example, let's add like the example I just gave. Oh, a customer comes to the bank and says, I want to change the date of birth. Now, remember the bank already has details about that particular customer. Now, they are not deleting the record of that customer, right? What they are doing is just changing the value, that is the date of birth, right? The field, which is date of birth, they are just changing that particular stuff of the customer. You can see which is what updates. So it means you already have an existing record of that customer. Now, they are not, so if the customer comes and says, I want to change the date of birth, right? So the question is, are you deleting it? No, you are simply just updating stuff itself. Linus, do you want to say something?
Yeah. Delphina called me about some minutes
Please,
ago.
a minute. Okay. Okay, so let me just continue from the DML and DQL. Like I said, I actually talked about inserts that you add new data rows. Either you want to see rows or you want to see new records, right? Just to be sure, can everybody see me? You can just drop on the chat. If you can hear me and you can also see my screen, you can either drop one in the chat or let me just get some reactions. So I want to be sure that you can hear me clearly. I don't know. Can everyone hear me, please? Just drop on the chat. Okay. So Musa, thank you very much. You're done. Please, can anybody hear me? Just drop on the chat, please, if you can. I want to be sure that you can hear me. I can also see my screen. It's just before I continue. Okay, good. Thank you. So DML, like I said, DML actually means data manipulation language. So with this, what you do is you try to add new rows, either you want to say new rows or you want to say new records, right? So you try to add new records into your table, right? And I was trying to explain updates. I say, for example, a customer goes to the bank and says, oh, I want to just change my date of birth. Now the question is, the bank already has details of that customer, right? So it means that that customer details are supposed to be a record in the bank's table, right? That is in a bank table containing the customer. Yeah. So because the customer wants to change or update the date of birth, which is where this update comes in. So modify existing data in rows. Remember, I said a particular record represents details of a particular cost, right? So once an update is being made, that record is not deleted. They're just updating the date of birth there, right? Now, delete would mean you are deleting specific rows from a table. So it could be that, oh, like looking at this, actually, what's the word? I'm trying to remove specific rows from a table. Now, let me go back. Let me try to make this full screen. And let me try to just go back. Now you can see here, you can see it is drop and truncate. Now for DML, you can see it's delete. So if you're trying to remove a specific row from a table, so you might be wondering, Victor, so what is the answer of drop and truncate? Now you can see in this when I give the difference between drop and I say drop, what it means is it deletes everything, but truncate removes all the rows, right? Can you see that? Now with this delete, you are removing a specific row. Can see the difference. So insert, updates, delete, and merge. If I'm looking to remove a specific row from a table, what do I use? I use delete. If I'm looking to delete the entire table, I want to delete the entire table. So what should I use? Should I use drop or should I use truncate? Remember, I said delete the entire table. Delete the entire table, right? Should we use drop or should we use truncate? You can just drop your answers in the chat. You can drop your answers in the chat. So if you're looking to delete the entire table, are we going to use drop or are we going to use truncate? I just want to be sure that that part is clear, right? So before we continue. Okay, so I think this part is clear. So now let's move to DQL, right? So okay. So now if you're trying to retrieve data from one or more tables, you use select. Now, what does where it does? Now remember, select is just retrieving data from one or more tables. Now you might want to specify a condition. Oh, let's say I want to say, oh, maybe I have what's the word? Let's say I actually have another table called regions, right? And let's say, like I said, the bank, they have branches in Lagos, they have branches in Abuja. So they're looking to just select information about customers that are in the Lagos region, for example, right? So it means this is where the where comes in. So you are specifying a condition, oh, where the region is in Lagos, for example, right? I'm just giving an example. So you're looking to filter record based on specified conditions, like this is where you use where. Like I said, all of these things, you get to understanding more when we start writing our queries. When you say order by, either you are trying to sort in ascending order or you are trying to sort in descending order. Right? Group by would mean, oh, you're trying to aggregate. Like I said, all of these things, you get to understand it better when we start writing our queries, right? Okay. So let me move to the next. So I think that's all. Okay. Sorry, let me try to share this again. What is going on? A minute, please. Okay. Can everyone see my screen? I don't know why this is acting like that. Okay. So now the question is, which DBMS are we going to be using for our SQL? We are going to use MySQL, right? They are going to, so they are actually like different, they are different DBMS. So when I say DBMS, what I mean is DBMS means it stands for database management, right? Database management system. So here's the thing, right? We have like different, what we actually have like different softwares that are used to run the SQL. We have PostgreSQL, we have MySQL, right? Now, look at something. Now, the reason why we decided to pick MySQL is because MySQL is, so if you are to check rankings, right? Number one is Oracle, number two is MySQL, right? So Is it that you can't use others? You can actually use others, but MySQL is widely used. So because of that, if you're trying to learn something, you want to learn something that like most companies actually use it or something, which is why they are using MySQL, right? Okay. So see MySQL as, like I said, the DBMS. That's where. So with that, you actually you have access to your server. You also get to write your SQL, right? Okay, I think this is the last page for this, right? So let me just go back to this. I already explained this, right? Okay, so let me stop it to see if anybody has any questions, right? Let me stop it to see if anybody has any questions, please. Does anybody has any questions before we continue? Does anybody has any questions before we continue? Okay. Now, just to chip in this, right? Now, you have non-relational database. Let me just talk about it briefly, right? So they call it NoSQL. NoSQL because you're not writing SQL, right? You're actually using something else, right? Now, non-relational data. Remember, I said the reason why you say relational database because your data is structured. If I say your data is structured, it means you have your data in tables, right? Table with main rows and columns, right? So if you are talking about unstructured data, or you're talking about semi-structured data, you are not talking about relational database because the data is not structured in rows and columns, right? Semi-structured will mean maybe JSON file, XML, unstructured, like you have your image, you have music and all that, right? Now you can't use SQL for all of this, right? So which is why you actually have other stuff that are actually used for this, right? I won't really emphasize on them because we are not looking at NoSQL. So you have document database, you have key value store, you have column value, column family, you also have graph view. So if you're talking about the document database, that's where you hear MongoDB. See, anytime you hear MongoDB, just know, they're talking about NoSQL, but the particular thing they're looking at is document database, like JSON-like document, right? If your stuff is done in key values, maybe someone else might have heard of DynamoDB, that's AWS DynamoDB. They are talking about key value stuff, right? If you hear something like Apache Cassandra, something like that, that's column family. If you hear something like Neo4j, that's graph. That's like we are not emphasizing on these different concepts because our only focus is just on SQL. Okay, so just to be sure that everything I've talked about is there, you can just drop on in the chat before we look at data modeling, right? So the reason why I'm just trying to, please, if everything I've talked about, if everything is clear, just drop on in the chat. And the reason why I want to just talk about data modeling is because it's just so that when we start writing our queries, right, or SQL scripts, you you have a strong understanding of something. So if you are using this, you know why we are using this and stuff like that, right? So if if it is clear, please just drop on the chat before I explain what data modeling is. If everything I've talked about, if it is clear, just drop one in the chat, right? Just drop one in the chat. So I said our focus is only on SQL, right? SQL, that's what I mean. We are not doing NoSQL. We are not, it's just SQL. Yes, that's what I meant. So when you see the data model, I'll try to explain those, I'll just try to explain, right? So you can easily just go through this talk and also just try to read through on your own, right? I'm just going to just try to summarize everything in this documents, right? So when you talk about data modeling, you just see it as the way you structure and organize your data for a database, right? And now this is where you have whether it's Snowflake or a star schema. Just before I get to that, just before I talk about types of data modeling, right? Now you have different types of data modeling. You have Snowflake, you have star schema, right? So it means now the question is, Victor, all of these things, it's okay to have an understanding of these things, right? But like I said, when it comes to creating database, data warehouse, it's mostly the work of the data engineer, So you as a data scientist, it's just the right query, right? So which is why except you find yourself in a company that the hire as a full stack data professional, which that is not supposed to be the case. But when it comes to creating, for those data professionals who need to have solid knowledge about data modeling, they are data engineers because that's their work. Because they create infrastructure for your data. So if you are creating infrastructure for your data, you need to understand what type of infrastructure to go with. Should we go with Star? Should we go with Snowflake? It's not. It's just okay if you have. Oh, I know this. This is what this refers. This is what this means. This is what this means, right? But not necessarily like it's turning knowledge, like I said, because this turning knowledge about this concept are mostly for data engineers, right? Now, I talked about primary key, and I don't think I really need to. I already explained primary key. I already explained primary key, right? Let me just talk about this briefly. I think I already explained tables. I explained what attribute means. I also explained what relationship means, right? So I can move to this part. So now let me talk about it. Let me just emphasize on the type of relationship, right? You have one-to-one relationship, you have one-to-many relationship, you have many-to-one, you have many-to-many relationship, right? So one-to-one relationship. So let's try to give a very practical example. Yeah. So when you say one-to-one, okay, Musa, please, I think you raised your hand. Please go ahead.
Yes, yes. I don't know if I'm the only one. The screen I'm seeing is still introduction to my
Okay.
SQL.
Let me stop sharing and share again. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for pointing out. Let me start sharing again. A minute. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, 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 yes.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me bring this down. Okay. So now look at something, right? So type of relationship, you have one-to-one relationship, right? One-to-one relationship would mean you can say when you're defining relationship, the first thing you need to tell yourself is, so I'm going to define a relationship. It means that I have two tables, right? And I'm trying to okay, thank you. And I'm trying to establish the fact that whether there's a relationship or not, which is one-to-one. So what it means is you could have one record in table A that corresponds exactly to one record in table B. Something like that, right? Now, let me explain what I mean. Now, you have one record in table A that actually corresponds to exactly one record in table B. I think I actually gave this example, right? Now, here's the thing: we expect every employee in the bank to have one address, right? Oh, where do you stay? I stay maybe I stay on the island or something like that, right? So we expect, sorry, please, Linus, you can just help with letting people in. Thank you very much. So one record in table actually corresponds to exactly one record in table B, right? You also have one-to-many. Now, let me see if we have, I'm trying to scroll to see if I have that diagram here. So at least I think having a diagram here will be clear. I don't know if okay, good, perfect. Now let me use this to explain one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many, and stuff like that, right? Now let me use this to explain it. Now let me start with this. And let me start with this, right? Let me start with this. Now I said types of relations, we have one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, many-to-many, right? Okay. Now look at something. Let me look at the other table and the financial table. Now, why is this one-to-one? Why is this one-to-one? Now, the question you need to ask yourself is, which column connects? Now, I'm talking about financials and others. I'm trying to use this diagram to explain one-to-one, one-to-many, and others, right? Now, if you look at these two tables, now here's my question. Now, which column? I'm looking at financials, I'm looking at others. Now, looking at these two tables, right? Financials table and others table. Now, which column would you say connects these two tables together? Please drop your answers in the chat. Financials and others. Now, which column would you say connects these two tables together? Please drop your answers in the chat. Financials and others. right? So my question is, which column will you see connects these two tables together? We are looking at financials and others. So these are different tables. So this is just a breakdown of the columns or the attributes you have in each table. Oh, for financials table, you have financial ID, other ID, and stuff like that. So my question is, financial table and others, which column would you see connects these two tables together? Please drop your answers in the chat. Other ID. Thank you very much. Other ID. Now, why is this? Thank you very much. Why is this one-to-one? Now, this is one-to-one. First off, in other ID, you can only have one unique order ID. So it means each orders can only have one unique identifier, which is why we have other ID. Can you see this? Now you have other ID here. You also, so it means in this table, you can also have how many unique values? Just one unique value. So it means when we look at this order table, we look at order ID. Like I said, the first question is each column connects these two tables together. The column is order ID. Now this order ID, I already know this order ID is the primary key. Now the question is, how many times can each order ID occur? It can only occur once. Why? Because it is a primary key. It can only occur what? Once. Right? Now let's come to this table. Now the other ID here, how many times can it occur? It can also occur how many times? Once. Why? Because other ID is a primary key. And remember, it's a primary key are what unique values, right? You will never have a duplicate value for a primary key. So it means, for example, now the first order will have its own unique identifier. Second order will also have its own unique identifier. So if order ID connect these two tables together, and in this case, like I said, our focus is on the column that connect the two tables together. That's what we are focusing on. Order ID and order ID. So question is, order ID, how many times for each order ID can you have duplicate values for it? No, you can only have one unique values, right? Come here. For order ID, how many unique values can you have for order ID? Just one unique value, right? For each order ID. So which is why it's what? 1-to-1. So it means one order ID here corresponds to what? One order ID here. Which is why you can see 1-to-1. Because in this place, order ID is a primary key. I remember it's the primary key and unique values, right? And when we come here, this order ID is a foreign key here. Why? Because remember, it's a primary key here. So if order ID, you can only have unique values for it. So what it means is order ID, you can also have what? Unique values for it. So it means one order ID here corresponds to what? One order ID. So that is one unique value here corresponds to what? One unique value. Which is why it's called what? 1-to-1. One unique order ID, one unique value, one unique value. Like I said, the first question you ask yourself is, what connects these two tables together? Order ID. So looking at order ID, you can only have one unique value for it, right? That's one. So it maps to the other ID can also appear many times, just once. This is why it's what? 1-to-1. Unique value corresponds to what? One unique value. Can you see that? Because if you look at it, this gives information about total cost, profits, and revenue, right? Now you can see the total cost, the total profit, revenue is focused on each order that was made by the customer. I know each order is already represented as order ID. So you can see one unique value. This is why it's what? 1-to-1. I believe this explains why this is what? 1-to-1. Let me just stop it if anybody has any question. I don't know if this explanation explains why this is 1-to-1. Order ID corresponds one value for each order ID, one unique value. It's always going to be unique value, right? So it means each order ID will be unique. You can never have, for example, let's say the order ID is ORD_1. You can never have ORD_1 again appearing twice. It's not possible. It's only going to appear once, right? And also going to appear once, right? Which is why it's what? 1-to-1. So I believe this explains 1-to-1, right? So now I can talk about one-to-many. Now I can talk about one-to-many. I'll talk about one-to-many, right? Okay, now let's look at orders and regions. Now, why did I look at orders and regions? Because you can see one-to-many. I'm just trying to use the diagram to explain the different types of regions so you get what I'm trying to do. Now, if you look at this is one-to-many. Now let's try to think about it. Now, when you talk about region, right? Now,
sorry, Mr. Victor.
Okay, yes, please.
Yes, this financial
Yes.
If you look at shipping, the shipping also has a order ID. Now we say financial could be one to many as well. I hope I'm not, because I can see order ID
No.
under the shipping, order ID on all the order.
Okay, so you know what you are looking at. So what you are looking at is this mapping. You can see there's a line here. There's a line between orders and financial. It means orders is related to financial. Now let's come back here. Orders and shipping, they are not related though, because I cannot see any line here. This shipping is related to financials. Now the reason why it's one-to-one is because for each order, when a customer makes an order, right? That order already has its own unique identifier. Now the order has to be shipped to the customer. So which means that particular order also has its own unique shipping ID. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Look at this order ID. See, link me to order ID. Look at order ID, order ID. So it means the order ID that is here corresponds to the order ID that is here. If you look at this, can you see this? Because for each order, like I said, each order will have its own shipping ID, which is why you can see you have shipping ID. You can see this. So you can see unique order ID here corresponds, because it means the order ID, you can never have two values, or you can never have duplicates in your order values. It's not going to be possible. So this is still one-to-one. So you're looking at this line. Look at this line. Financials and orders relationship. Financials and shipping relationship. Now I can't see any line there. Can you see this? If I look around, there's no line that connects these two. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. There's no line that connects these two. So now let's look at something. I think for orders, you also have order ID, you also have order ID. So it means I can also connect these orders to shipping. I think I forgot to do that. Because this has order ID, this has also ID, I can also connect this table to this. I don't think I actually saw it. Order IDs. This is also related to this table. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say, Musa. So I think I forgot to also do that here too. So here too, I don't know. Was that the question he asked, Musa? Just to be sure. That can you also say is one-to-one? Is that the question he asked? Musa, just to be sure.
No, the question I asked is order. Okay. This is Tunde anyway. Order.
Jesus. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Continue, please.
There's order ID for shipping and order ID for order and financial. I just want to find out if the order here, because one can order for something and not pay for shipping. Maybe is the order ID here is different from order ID or order ID under the order. So I just want to be sure.
No, it's still the same. It's still the same.
Still the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, it's still the same. It's still the same thing. So like for this stuff, it's like it's a company that sells stuff. So for all of their stuff are always shipped to the customer, right? So they are always shipped. Even when you purchase items from an e-commerce platform, right? They will still deliver it to your place. They will still deliver it to whether the warehouse is in Lagos, it still be delivered to you, right? So they still get just that, like it's apologies for that, please. Nice. Okay, so please, Dolom, please go ahead to your question. I think you raised your hand. Please go ahead. If you can hear me clearly.
Yeah, but we can also
Please
have
go ahead.
Yeah, but we can also, for orders and shipping, we can also have like one-to-one relationship.
Sorry?
I said for orders and shipping, we can also have like one-to-one relationship, right?
Yes. You can also have one-to-one relationship. Yes. You can also have one-to-one relationship. So it's actually supposed to be a line that connects with orders to this shipping. Yes. The others, this should be related. This is why I said I didn't put that. Because other ID, yeah, other ID, it means this can also be related to this. So it means these three tables are related because if you look at this, other ID is here, right? Other ID is also found here, right? So you can see this is also still related in a way. Yes. Okay, so I think I was trying to explain. Okay, let me stop it. See if anybody has any other questions before I continue. Does anybody has any other question before I continue? Okay, so let me proceed. Now this is one to many. So I'm wondering, Victor, why is it that this is one to many? Now let's look at it, right? Let's try to break it down. Now you have regions. So let's say that because we can actually look at. So this is just a model of the data we are going to use for the SQL course itself, right? Now you have the regions table, right? Now regions table just tells one the region. Oh, maybe it's in Lagos, maybe it's in Abuja, maybe it's in Port Harcourt, for example, right? Now let's try to think about this realistically. Right. So what it means is now it means that for different orders, do you know you can also have the same region ID for them? Let me explain. Now let's assume that I'm still talking about an e-commerce company. An e-commerce company, let's say that they have their customers. We have customers in Lagos. We have customers in Abuja. Let me just use Lagos and Abuja for example. We have customers in Lagos. We have customers in Abuja. Now, here's the thing. Do you know that all the customers in Lagos, do you know they have the same region ID? Because it's still is the same region, right? It's still in Lagos, right? The region ID is going to be the same. Why? Because they're all of them are in the same region. Now, so if you look at it, so it means that you can have one region ID for different orders. You get it? So it means you can have different orders in one region. So there's like one region ID maps to a lot of orders. Let me explain what I'm trying to say. You have the company, like I said, actually has customers in Lagos. They have customers in Abuja, right? Now, all the customers in Lagos will have the same region ID. Why? Because they are in the same region. So what this means is now this region ID, so it means you can have one region ID for different orders. So let's say a customer places an order. A customer in Lagos places an order. Another customer also places another order. Now, but it's still in the same. I'm using Lagos for example. It's still in the same city. Let me use that word. It's still in the same state rather. It's still in Lagos. So if you have to give a let me use the word state ID for it, so you get what I'm trying to say. So it means all the customers will still have the same state ID because they are in the same state. Which is why this is one to many. Dolan, I think you want to say something just before I continue. Do you have any questions? Raise your hands.
Yeah, so in this situation, right, they are talking about regions and other.
Yes.
So regions can have, like this region ID under regions will be like unique, but under like others, it may appear like several.
Yes, it might actually appear
Would the
several
other
times.
ID, yeah, but would the other ID be the same, like be unique in that situation, or is going to appear several times as well?
So the thing is, because this region ID is here, in this case, it's going to appear several times. Because let's assume that 3 customers place order in Lagos, for example. So it means those 3 customers will have the same region ID, which is in this order. I don't think I'm trying to say. So it means the region ID here is unique, but it's going to appear several times here. Why? Because you can have 3 customers in the same region. So because they are in the same region, they will have the same region ID. So it means customer 1, the same. Let me say the region ID is reg_1, for example. So it means for this order, we have reg_1. For this order, they also have reg_1. For this order, they also have reg_1. Why? Because the different orders are in the same region. So it means that you have a unique region ID here, but the region ID can actually appear multiple times in this table because you can have different different orders in the same region. I don't know if we are on the same page now, Dolan. Just to be sure. Dolan, are we on the same page?
Yeah, so the love na mistake. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so now let me ask this question. Now let's assume that I have a supermarket, right? Let's say the name of my supermarket is Adekombi supermarket. Now Adekombi supermarket in Lagos, and I also have Adekombi supermarket in Abuja, for example. Let me not use Lagos. I already give an explanation of it. So let's say that I actually have supermarket in Tuesday. I have one supermarket on the island. I also have another supermarket on the mainland, for example. I have supermarket on the island. I also have another branch rather on the mainland. I have one on the island. I have one on the mainland, right? Now, for all the customers in the mainland, now you can see the region is island, the region is mainland, for example. My question is, all the customers in in the mainland branch, will they have the same region ID? That's my question. I have two branches. I have one branch on the mainland. I have one on the island. My question is, all the customers on the mainland, right? Will they have the same region ID? Whether your answer is yes or your answer is no. So if your answer is yes, drop on the chat. If your answer is no, drop 0 in the chat. Okay,
Yes.
so let me re-explain, right? So it's like, let's say, like I said, I give the example of I have a supermarket, but I have two branches. One is on the mainland, one is on the island. Now, all my customers on the mainland, they are going to have one region ID because they are in the same region, right? So it means all of them will have one region ID. So it means it's only just a unique region. So the region is mainland, for example. Let me say I give mainland as reg_1. So it means all the customers, the region ID for them will be what? The reg_1. Now, good. You know how you have, is it postal code they call it? So if, for example, let me say I stay in, I'm just looking for the best way to explain it. Everybody that stays in Somolu, I think there's a way they do it. Let me just do what Somolu. Let's say everybody who stays in Yaba, for example. Let me say everybody who stays in Yaba have the same postal code. So it's just a unique postal code. But that postal code is for everybody that stays in Yaba. That is one postal code to many people who stay in Yaba. I don't think I'm trying to say. So everybody who stay in Yaba will have one postal code. So it means that one postal code is used by many people who stay in Yaba. So if, for example, if they decide to fill the form online, they are being asked what is their postal code. Everybody who stays in Yaba will put the same postal code because we are in the same region. So this is what I'm trying to say. So you have I have a supermarket. I have a branch on the mainland.
I guess he has a problem with network.
Yeah, so let's wait a little bit. Okay. If anyone has any question or anything, ask.
Okay, so I was talking about this, right? So apologies for that. I was talking about this, that region ID, because you can have different orders in a particular, which is why this is what one to many. Now, remember, we are starting from regions to orders. You know, because we are doing from regions to orders, it is what one to many, right? So my question is, if you are doing from orders to region, let me explain. You know, because we are doing from regions to order, it is one to look at it, one to many, right? If you are doing the other way, like we are not doing from region to order, we are going from orders to region. From these orders to region, are we going to call it many to one, or we are going to call it one to many? That's my question. From regions to orders, you can see it was one to many. So my question is, if you are now going from orders to region, are we going to call this many to one or one to many? I'm going from orders to region. Is this one to many or many to one? Just drop your answers in the chat, please. So my question is, I know that from region to orders is one to many, right? But now we are going from orders to region. So are we going to call it many to one, or we are going to say one to many?
Many
We
to
are
one.
going from orders, thank you very much, many to one, right? Because look at this. You can have many region ID here, which maps to it is unique, because you can see, if it's from this is one to many. Can see this means you have many region ID, but it's mapped to just a particular region ID. So this is what many to one. Okay, so Messi, I don't know if the explanation I gave before now is clear. Okay, you said you still don't understand this concept. Okay, Esther, please go ahead, please.
I want to ask, I don't know, maybe my own concept of understanding is right.
Okay.
Like the region ID now under
Yes.
and the other under the others column.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
not a key what do you call it again? Key, what's the word that you use? It's not key.
Primary key.
Yes, primary key.
Primary
yes.
key, yes. Yes, primary
it's
key,
not
yes,
the primary
yes.
key. So can we
No,
say that
so
because it's
okay.
Can we say that because
Sorry.
it's not a primary key?
Yes.
In that other column, it will not be many to one, based on that your question.
Okay, so let me restructure it like this. Now, you know, for primary key, there are unique values, right? Now, if you look at foreign key, so it means that you can actually have, when we talk about primary key, yeah, in this case, region ID is a primary key. So it means you can only have one unique value. Now, in this case, it is not a primary key here. It is a foreign key, which is why we can actually have many region ID. Like, let's say a particular region ID is region as one. We can have it multiple times here because it is not a primary key. I don't know if you are still saying the same thing, right? Esther, are we still saying the same thing? Hello, Esther, are you there? Okay. You are still saying the same, so you can just drop one in the chat. Okay, Messi, let me explain it in this. Let me explain it in this way.
So, sorry, Victor. Let me just ask my question since it's concerning this region. I know you were saying, so I want to clarify if what I heard was concerning the table named orders. So you talked about region ID, that since everybody is in, for example, Lagos, that their region ID will be the same. Was that in the table regions or for the table orders or both? So
okay, so let me okay, so let me just answer your question. So if, for example, if one is asked that, let me use Lagos for example. Let's say that we have, let me just say mainland and island. Let me just use that very quick example. So if someone should ask me that, let me see how many parts do you have in Lagos? Let me just say mainland. I'm not calling their names. So I'm just saying either mainland. I'm just saying either island, right? So it means if I'm going to have a region table, I'm only going to have two regions there, mainland and island. right? You can see it's a region table. Now, but if I now have another table that contains the names of people that stay on the mainland, for example, let me just give that example. Now you can see for everybody who stay on the mainland, they are going to have the same region ID. Now, what I'm saying is in this region table, for example, the region ID is going to be unique. But when you come to the others table, it does not have to be. It can appear more than once. Why? Because for this particular story, it means you can have different orders in the same region. But if it were to be the region table, region ID, which means it's only you can only have just one value for it. It means if I have region as _1, I can't have region as _1 again because it is a primary key in its own table. But when we come here, you have region ID here. Region ID is not a primary key here, which means that it is a foreign key here. Now, because it's a foreign key, you can actually have more than one. So it means you can actually appear more than once. That's what I mean. So region as _1 can appear more than once because it means that you can have many orders for a particular region. I don't know if this illustration explains what I'm trying to say.
Yes, it explains. So I have a second question. Does every table need to have a unique identifier?
Yes.
So for these orders now, this orders table, unique identifier, yes. All these other ones are foreign keys.
Yes. So let's start with the financial statement. For the financial statement, if you are asked what is the unique identifier here, financial ID, right? Let's come to others table. For others table, what is the unique identifier here? Orders ID. Orders table contains different orders. So it means that each order will have its own unique identifier. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So it means for regions, the unique identifier is what? Region ID. For shipping ID, what is the unique identifier? Shipping ID. For product, what is the unique identifier? Product ID.
Okay.
So it means for this place now, the order ID can only appear once because you have different orders and each order has its own unique identifier. I don't think you get what I'm trying to say.
Yes, I get it now.
Yeah, so it's just like saying that 10 customers place different orders. Now you can see 10, so it means each of those orders will have, so it means this is order 1, order 2, order 3, order 4, order 5, order 6, order 7, and so on, right? But now let's assume that for those different orders, now you now have some of them that stay on the mainland and some of them that stay on the island. So it means if I'm going to deliver, I'm going to put all of them for those customers that stay on the mainland, they will be in one bag. For those customers that stay on the mainland, they'll be in another bag. So it means each of those, so it means for those customers, they already have a unique region ID. They have the same region ID because they are in the same region. The other orders will also have the same region ID. Why? Because they are also in the same region. That's just the way.
Okay, so here's my last question. For this shipping, sorry,
no problem.
So for this shipping table now, we've said that the unique identifier is shipping ID. So by chance, is there any possibility that the other ID would be the same for more than one? Is that possible?
I don't think I get your question. You're asking if other ID can appear.
For the shipping table. So my question I want to ask is, can one table have, I know that there's just one, can one table have more than one unique identifier? I think that should be the question. Why I'm asking is for this shipping table now, we've said that the primary key is shipping ID. So for that other ID, is it not going to be unique for each shipping ID? Is it not unique for each shipping ID? Or I don't know if
let me explain. Okay, no, it's clear. So before we got to this part, I mentioned that there's something for primary key. There's something called foreign key. Primary key and foreign key. Now, if you look at this, you have shipping ID, you have other ID. So the question is, which is the unique identifier? So if you are talking about unique identifier, it means you are talking about the primary key. Now, what is the primary key in this table? The primary key is what shipping ID. Now, this other ID is a foreign key. It is not a primary key. Remember, the unique identifier for each table is the primary key. I don't think I'm trying to say. So it means that because of that, this shipping ID is the primary key. Why this other ID is not the primary key? Rather, it is what? It is the foreign key. So if I'm asked that what is the unique identifier here, the unique identifier here is what? Shipping ID. Why? Because shipping ID is the primary key for this table. I don't know if this clarifies your question.
Okay, it's clear, but sorry. The other ID now in this table, is it possible that it's not seen as the unique identifier, but it is unique, like it's not repeated throughout? Like we understand that it's a foreign key, but it's not repeated throughout. Like the ID is not repeated it's not repeated for any other table, that everything is unique, but it's not seen as the unique key. So is there a possibility like that?
Okay, so if I should get your so if I should get your question correctly, so what you mean is for the other ID, can it appear more than once on the shipping table? Is that your question?
No more than once, but like, can it be unique for all the times it appears? It must not be repeated.
So like I say, it all depends. So for me, what I'm gonna say, it depends on the way the company decides to structure their data. Right now, remember, this is a company data where they already divided financial, shipping, and others. Now, the reason why it's like that is because based on the data I have on ground, for the other ID, it only appears once, But the question is, other ID, can it appear more than once? Yes, because it is not a primary key, it is a foreign key, You get it? But for this particular stuff we are working with, the other ID only appears once. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So it all depends on the data you're working with. There are some organizations like that, for example, like this one that we saw, we noticed that region ID actually appears more than once, right? So in this case, region ID can appear more than once. Why? Because it is a foreign key. It is not a primary key. So can it appear more than once? Yes. But in this case, it's in the data, it's not, it only appears once. I don't know if this clarifies what I'm trying to say. It can appear more than once, but the data we have on ground, right? The other ID only appears once. That does not mean it cannot appear more than once. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. Rita.
I think I do. I think when I see more examples of how this thing comes out in real life, it will be more clear.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Messi, I don't know, is this clear now, please?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
Right. Okay. So I think I've explained one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one, right? Is that how they dedicated to Rita? Right? And many. Right? Sorry?
Please, sorry, sir. I said that means that regions to other will be one-to-many, right?
So regions to other, yes, it's one-to-many. Yes, one-to-many.
Okay. Yes. Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yes. So you can see products to others is also one-to-many. Why? Because each product, let's assume that let me just give you a very basic example. Let me just say I sell cup, plates, and spoon. I'm trying to give you that example. So it means we can have customers, we can have different orders that are placing order for one part. So it means a single product can appear more than once here. So we can have this particular customer purchasing this. We can have another for this product. We can have another for that same product. We can also have another order for that same product. This is why this is what one to many. So I think maybe perhaps when we start writing our scripts, right, we get to understand better, which is why I just try to give all those examples that I give. Right. What is the time? Okay, so this is already 9:02. Okay, let me just stop here. So tomorrow is going to be coding. I say coding. Tomorrow we get to write our scripts. Let me try to post recording now. I have